I thought my sister's wedding would be just another perfect day. Flowers, laughter, and everyone pretending we were a flawless family. But something felt off the moment I stepped into the ballroom. There were faces I didn't recognize, and my dad seemed distracted, smiling at people I had never seen before. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just imagining things. Until I heard a small voice call out, "Daddy!" I froze. My heart sank, and the blood in my veins ran cold. I turned, scanning the room, and there they were, three children clutching the hand of a woman I didn't recognize, all looking at my dad with a familiarity that made my stomach twist. I wasn't supposed to know them. None of us were. But now, standing there in the middle of my sister's wedding, the secret my dad had buried for years was crashing into the open, and I had no idea how far this would go. The reception roared on, filled with clinking glasses and cheerful music, but my smile was a mask stretched too thin. Every time my dad laughed, every time he leaned close to that woman, I felt the walls of our family's carefully constructed image crumble. It was like watching a house burn while everyone else danced inside, oblivious to the smoke curling at their feet. I tried to focus on my sister, who looked like a princess in her gown, radiant with joy. She was finally living her dream, marrying the man she adored. But as I looked at her glowing face, I couldn't ignore the storm brewing just behind us. My father, the man who taught us about loyalty, about family pride, was standing with a woman who clearly wasn't my mother, and children who called him daddy as naturally as I ever had. I drifted closer under the pretense of mingling. Their laughter rang sharp in my ears. The children clung to his legs, fighting for his attention, and he gave it freely. My stomach twisted. How long had this been going on? How many times had he walked through our front door, acting like the perfect husband, while this hidden family waited for him elsewhere? When I glanced at my mother, I realized I wasn't the only one who noticed. She kept stealing looks at them, her expression controlled, but her eyes heavy with something I'd never seen before: resignation. As if this wasn't a surprise to her at all. She didn't move to confront him. She didn't scream. She just sat there, smiling tightly, keeping her dignity intact while her marriage unraveled in front of all of us. The more I watched, the more I realized this wasn't some casual connection. The woman, her posture, her comfort, her familiarity with him made it clear this was no fling. She knew him deeply. And the children, they weren't just close to him, they adored him. My father wasn't a guest in their lives. He was their anchor, their world. My heart pounded. My sister's new husband gave a speech about love and trust, raising his glass to my parents as an example of lasting marriage. The room cheered, but I felt sick. If only they knew. If only they saw what I was seeing. And part of me wanted to stand up right there to tear the mask off and expose everything. But another part whispered, "Wait, watch. There's more to this than you think." Because something about the timing didn't add up. Why would this secret family show up now, on the one day my sister's happiness was meant to shine? Was it an accident, or had they been invited by my father himself? That thought chilled me more than anything else. I couldn't shake it. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't even nervous. He was comfortable, too comfortable, which meant this wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. My dad wanted them here. And if that was true, then the explosion waiting to hit this family was far bigger than any of us imagined. I sipped my champagne, my hands trembling, my mind racing. This wasn't just about betrayal, it was about revelation. My father had been preparing for this moment. The only question now was, what exactly was he planning to reveal? The music played on, but my focus was locked on my father. He wasn't nervous, wasn't hiding. In fact, he was radiant, beaming at those kids like a proud dad at a school recital. And the woman by his side carried herself like she belonged there. Not a mistress sneaking glances, not some shameful secret. No, she stood tall, unafraid, as though half this ballroom should already know her name. And maybe they did. I caught whispers at one of the tables. Two older women leaned close, murmuring, their eyes darting toward my dad's corner. My pulse quickened. They weren't surprised. They were gossiping, dissecting, which meant this wasn't news to everyone. The thought hit me like ice water. How many people knew? And why were we, his own children, left in the dark? I moved to refill my glass, listening closely. "Bold of him to bring them here," one whispered. The other shook her head, lips tight. It was bound to happen eventually. They didn't even lower their voices much. My ears burned. Bound to happen? What exactly had they known that I hadn't? Back at our family's table, my mother sat perfectly still. smiling at the right moments, nodding politely. But her eyes were empty, as if the light had been drained out of her long ago. I studied her, searching for answers. Did she know all along? Did she just accept it? Or was she silently crumbling beneath that polished facade? The not knowing was worse than anything else. My sister and her husband danced their first dance. The crowd gathered, cameras flashing, the picture of joy. But in the shadows of the ballroom, my father's second life loomed larger by the minute. The children clapped for the bride and groom, shouting excitedly, their voices cutting through the music. And I watched my dad beam with pride, not for my sister, but for them. Every instinct in me screamed to say something, to demand answers, but I stayed frozen. Timing mattered, and right now, there were too many layers I didn't understand. Why was my dad so bold? Why here? Why now? This wasn't exposure. This was presentation. He wanted us to see them, to see her. Then it happened, the moment that nearly broke me. During the father-daughter dance, my dad was pulled to the floor by my sister, their moment glowing with emotion. For a second, I thought maybe the illusion could hold. But then, as the song ended, one of the little boys rushed forward, wrapping his arms around my dad's leg and shouting, "Our turn, Daddy!" The ballroom gasped. Cameras still flashing caught the scene. My sister froze, veil trembling, her face pale. Gasps spread through the room like wildfire. My dad didn't push the child away. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he bent down, scooped the boy into his arms, and smiled as though this was perfectly natural. The entire room fell silent except for the boy's laughter. My sister's groom looked confused, searching the crowd. My mother's hands clutched her champagne glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. My heart pounded so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. The whispers turned into a low buzz across the hall. People were putting it together. No more guessing, no more subtle glances. The secret was bleeding into the open, right there on the dance floor. And then came the real twist. My father cleared his throat, microphone in hand, the boy still perched on his hip. His eyes scanned the crowd, calm, collected, almost proud. He tapped the mic and smiled. "There's something I need to share with all of you," he said. The room froze. My sister's face drained of color. My mother looked like stone, rigid and unblinking. And me? I held my breath, knowing the words about to leave his mouth would detonate our lives forever. The room held its breath. My father's hand gripped the microphone with the same steadiness he used when giving speeches at work, at church, at family gatherings. Only this time, it wasn't a speech of pride or celebration. It was something else, something darker. The boy on his hip giggled, oblivious to the tension strangling the air. My sister clutched her husband's hand, her smile gone, her wedding veil trembling like fragile glass. "I know today is about love," my dad began, his voice smooth and unhurried. "And that's why it's the right time to tell the truth, because love shouldn't be hidden." His eyes scanned the crowd, and when they landed on my mother, her expression didn't crack. She just stared back, lips pressed tight, as if she had heard this line rehearsed 1,000 times in her nightmares. "For years," my father continued, "I've had two families, and today I want to stop living in the shadows." The silence was suffocating. My sister's groom pulled her close, trying to shield her from the invisible knives flying through the air. My mother placed her glass down with robotic calm, but her hand shook. Gasps and murmurs broke across the tables, spreading like fire through dry grass. People weren't just shocked. They were hungry for every detail, their eyes darting between my mother, the other woman, and my dad, waiting for the next blow. "I know this is difficult," he said, "but these children are mine. And this woman," he gestured toward the stranger with a softness that stabbed me in the chest, "has been my partner for many years. I will no longer pretend otherwise." He spoke like he was freeing himself, like this was liberation, not destruction. And as the words left his mouth, the entire facade of our perfect family shattered into dust. My sister's knees buckled. Her new husband caught her before she collapsed, but the joy in her face was gone, replaced by disbelief. She whispered something, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse, but her eyes never left my father. "On my wedding day," she finally hissed, loud enough for half the room to hear. "You chose today?" Her voice cracked, slicing through the silence sharper than any knife. The woman beside him stayed calm. Too calm, her hand resting on one of the children's shoulders like this was a moment she had anticipated. She didn't look ashamed. If anything, she looked relieved. The realization twisted my stomach. This wasn't chaos for her. This was victory. I searched for my mother's reaction, desperate to see rage, anything human, but she sat still, her eyes glistening, her lips unmovable. Only when she finally stood did the crowd fall silent again. She walked toward the center of the dance floor, her steps slow but steady, her head held high. For a second, I thought she might beg, plead, fight to reclaim what was hers. Instead, she looked my father straight in the eye and said, "You didn't destroy me today. You freed me." The ballroom erupted. Gasps, shouts, murmurs ricocheted off the walls. My father blinked, thrown off for the first time all evening. My mother turned to the crowd, her voice louder, stronger. "This man thought he could humiliate me in front of you all, but all he's done is prove the kind of man he really is. And if you still respect him after this, that shame is yours to carry." Her words landed like thunder, shaking the room. The groom's family rose to their feet, pulling my sister away from the chaos. The celebration was over. The fairy tale wedding had transformed into a public trial. Guests whispered, phones came out, and I knew this scandal would live online forever before the night was done. But in that moment, none of that mattered. My mother had reclaimed her dignity, even as our family fell apart. My father tried to speak again, his voice faltering now. "This doesn't change my love for any of you," he said, but the words sounded hollow, pitiful. No one applauded, no one nodded. The children tugged at his suit, confused by the sudden chill in the air. The other woman pulled them close, glaring at my mother, but her victory smile had dimmed. This wasn't the triumphant unveiling she'd imagined. It was a battlefield, and she was standing in the wreckage of someone else's war. I stood there, caught between fury and sorrow, watching decades of lies unravel in a single night. The man I once called a hero had orchestrated his own downfall, and he was too blind to see it. The damage was permanent. My sister's wedding day would forever be remembered not for love, but for betrayal, and my father, our father, would never again be the man we thought he was. As the crowd began to disperse, I caught my mother's eye. For the first time all evening, she smiled, not out of happiness, but out of defiance. She was broken, yes, but not defeated. And in that moment, I realized the truth my father had never understood. Sometimes the loudest revenge isn't rage or violence, it's survival. And my mother, standing tall in the ashes of his confession, had just won the war he thought he controlled.